Welcome to the Writer's Bar. I'm your host, Baron Bircher, best-selling author of Hard Latitudes. And it is my absolute delight to have a couple of very longtime friends visiting tonight. It occurred to me that I've spoken with a lot of authors and talked about the craft of writing and so forth. But there are more similarities, I think, than differences when we're talking about things like songwriting. And I know that my work has been informed by songwriters every bit as much as it has by authors. So I wanted to invite tonight a couple of absolute, incredibly accomplished songwriters, musicians, performers, founding members of the Southern California rock band Honk, who did 3 major label albums, toured with the Beach Boys, Loggins and Messina, Chicago. They've appeared on albums by Jackson Browne, a guy named Paul McCartney, another guy named Sting, George Harrison, Moody Blues, the list goes on, as well as some people you may have heard of. So my guest tonight, and thank you for being here, my friends Steve Wood and Beth Fitchet-Wood. Welcome to the Writer's Bar.
Thank you. We sound important.
Well, you are important.
I want to meet these people.
That's why you're here. But we're going to get into that in a minute because it really is very impressive, the things that you have done and the territory that you've traversed. But I guess first I wanted to start with, before we get into the writing part and the other stuff, how did each of you find music, or how did music find you and hook you to where you knew this is what you were going to do?
You go first, Steve.
Okay. Well, I had a lot of music in my growing up, not so much me, but my father was a gifted jazz piano player, as well as an FBI agent. So that's a whole other story.
That is all.
But he was a beatnik. But there was music happening in the house all the time, and he had buddies over to play jamming on the weekends and big parties and stuff. And I played a little bit. I played vibes. I knew a few songs, and he'd always set up the vibes, and we'd play at the parties and that kind of thing. And I took a very short period of that kind of piano lessons that makes you stop playing piano. Mm-hmm. And so there was always music in the house, and every weekend he'd buy a new album of some great jazz artist and then just play it over and over and over and over again. And so that just seeped, osmosis into my system. And then basically I was a music fan. I loved pop music. I loved the Beatles when they came along. I was a Beach Boys fan before that, mainly because of the sound. I loved the sound of the Beach Boys. Mm-hmm. And not to make this story too long, but I was living on the beach in Newport Beach as a surfer. My life was all about surfing. It was perfect. I was 14, surfing before school, surfing after school, had a girlfriend. Everything was perfect. And then my father got transferred to Dallas, Texas.
Oh, bummer.
And yeah, it was a bummer. I thought it was the end of my life. And when I got there, I thought to myself, what am I going to do with this $150 that my grandmother gave me to try to make me feel better?
For pity.
And I got this idea to get a guitar. And there's a lot of reasons for that. This is for a longer show. I'd go into it, but basically it was just like, I got to have something to do, and it's not surfing. So I bought a guitar, and soon I found a guy in my geometry class, and we started a band, and the band became quite successful.
When he's talking about soon, he's talking about 2 weeks later.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well,
or 3 weeks later.
No. About a year later, the fellow's father got us put out a record. You were
already in the band.
Yeah. But anyway, so we had a local hit, and it was a new dream for me. And we get together in this guy's bedroom and practice all the time. And we had gigs, a lot of gigs, and we travel around parts of Dallas, outside of Dallas, and play shows in our hearse. And and then when I was the last semester of my senior year, my dream came true as we got transferred. My father got transferred back to California, and I was back at the beach. And I thought, okay, that's it for music. I'm back into surfing. And pretty soon it became apparent that no, first of all, I didn't want to get up early enough to be a real surfer. And I fell in love with music. I knew I got in a band here right away. And then the final straw was I went to school. I took pre-med for a year and a half or something. And I discovered there were people there that were really serious about school. And I was serious about playing music, and I was working 5 nights a week. And at the time I didn't think, oh, you can have a fun job. You just have your job and then you have your fun. And that's the way my father kind of had his life.
Right.
And then I sort of backed into it because I flunked out of college. And then I was like, okay, now I'm free to be a musician.
Now, were you a guitar player that whole time?
No, I started on guitar, but as soon as the band started to get successful in Texas, we needed a keyboard because we played a lot of music by the Animals and bands
Right.
that had a keyboard was a big part of. And I had played some keyboards, so I gravitated towards it.
Well,
But the weird thing was that he didn't mention was that it only took him about a month between buying the guitar and actually starting the band. And it only took him about a year between buying the guitar, having this idea, and actually being a working musician. And that just doesn't happen.
Well, no,
that
absolutely. Well,
that's
it's for so
just
many
kind of strange.
reasons.
Yes.
Not the least of which is just playing the instrument. But
Yeah.
I know how smart you are, so that part doesn't. That doesn't.
You know
surprise
what? I
me.
mean, I don't think a lot of it is being
Bold.
kind of being bold, and
Yeah.
also just for some people, I think most people that I know that are successful, you like working with other people. If you're going to be in a band, it's like
It's just fun to hang.
it's a fun hang, and
Yeah.
and then like in my case, I was lucky because this bass player fellow that we both played guitar, and then he took up bass, and the guy's father just loved our band, and he was a good old boy, a prosecuting attorney in Duncanville. He could have kicked my butt, but for some reason, I struck him the right way, and he loved this, and he supported us and got us a loan, and we got equipment, and he helped kind of guide us through the stages that never would have happened without an adult who knew
Wasn't
how
on
to
your side.
negotiate the
Yeah.
planet. And so, part of it is luck, but it's also that luck happens because people open doors for you because they like you.
Well, it's the confluence of luck and hard work, right?
Yeah.
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 And,
Wasn't a
and
lot of
showing
work.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, how about you, Beth? How did music find you?
I don't even remember when that was because it was before I knew. I was I loved music before I knew, really.
Always
And
a Southern California girl?
No, I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, actually, and my parents, neither of them, we did not know a musician. My mother knew a musician, but there were no musicians in Phoenix, Arizona, certainly. I mean, there were none that we knew. My father was a stockbroker, and my mother was in musical theater because she loved music and she loved to sing and everything, but she was never a musician. She had a nice voice, but she would always get a new album every month, and they were always musical comedy albums. So that's where I started. He started in jazz, and I pretty much started in musical comedy, musical theater,
Like show tunes.
But yeah, like Oklahoma and My Fair Lady, and I adored those. It's like music was such a big part of my life that I didn't even realize that it was.
Good training for the pipes, though, right?
Yeah, because I was singing constantly, always, and I was very, very, very shy. Like pathologically shy, but I was always singing, always. And from the very, very first school that had a chorus, I was in the chorus because
She's still singing constantly
yeah.
to this day.
And I don't even know I am, it's really annoying. It's
not to me. I love hearing you in the back of the house. She sings when she walks around, and it's,
yeah.
I bought the all access pass.
Yeah.
yes, you did.
So it was a weird thing. It was not like it found me. It was like it was already there. It meant more to me than I can even convey, really. I mean,
when did the guitar show up for you?
well, the guitar showed up when I was 15. I took piano lessons. My mother tried to set me down in front of a piano at the age of 5, and she gave me, and we had some piano lessons. And this woman was so frustrated because every time she'd play a piece, and then she'd tell me, look at the dots and play this music, I would play it back to her, and I couldn't figure out why I had to look at the music in order to play it, because I would just play it back to her. And so she got really frustrated with that. I cannot imagine doing that. She got frustrated because I had a good enough ear to play back to her what she would play to me. And so she just she walked away from that one.
Interesting.
Yes. But so I didn't have any more piano lessons until I was about 9. And then I had piano lessons for maybe 2 years or something, but it was the kind of piano lessons that did not represent music to me. So I didn't really learn very much piano. I know more piano now than I did then. I love piano, but I started playing guitar. I fell in love with guitar at about the age of 15, when the Beatles were doing their thing, when Bob Dylan came out, when Peter, Paul, and Mary had all those simple guitar songs that you could just listen to and kind of pick out. And, the Animals, House of the Rising Sun,
right.
Easy. I mean, you can sit down with a guitar and start playing that.
As long as your guitar's in tune.
Yeah. Which when I first got my hands on a guitar, I didn't understand that you were supposed to tune it. This was how there was no music, and there were no musicians in my life. I had never seen anybody actually play guitar to where I could actually look at it, figure it out. It's just like it was.
So she had it was out. It wasn't just out of tune. The strings were not to the right notes. So she learned songs.
Yeah.
In a tuning that had nothing to do with the way anybody tuned.
Just it was absurd. And then I went to a party in high school where there was a very nice guitar that I know of to this day, a beautiful old Gibson, and it was tuned up. And oh boy.
Oh, the skies opened up.
The skies opened up, and I learned how to play that sucker in 3 months. I learned how to play the guitar in 3 months because I was ready to go.
I have to tell you, my first date ever was to a Honk concert back in, it would have been like, I guess 72 or 3. I'm thinking 72 at Dana Hills High School.
Oh yeah.
And it was a very important moment for me.
With Bertha?
Is that Bertha, the guitar?
No, Bertha
was
opening up.
No, the opening band was a band called Sunfighter.
Oh.
Do you remember Sunfighter? Well, they were kind of a heavy, they thought they were a heavy rock band. They did about 3 or 4 songs, but we were, everybody was there for you guys. Uh-huh. But the guitar thing that I remember is you were playing this beautiful ES 335.
Yeah.
And a hollow body, that beautiful hollow body you used to play. And when you started playing Buckeye Jim, I thought, oh my God, I got to play guitar. I have to learn how to play guitar.
Wow.
That's going to change.
Awesome.
And I did.
Awesome.
And I learned how to play at the Four Muses with Mary Jenkins and all of those, all those people.
Yeah.
But that's all you.
Oh, that was how neat. What a neat story.
Yeah, so thank you.
That's really, really neat.
And I hope you still have that guitar, because I have to say it had a tone that was unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's actually an Epiphone Casino.
Oh, it's an Epiphone. It looks like a 335. Though,
it does.
Like John Lennon's Epiphone Casino. He has the same,
But it doesn't have wood going all the way from the neck all the way to the butt.
Yeah.
It's hollow. It's solidly hollow as opposed to a 335.
Yeah.
Which has salt. The neck keeps going through the guitar.
I didn't know that was the difference between those two instruments.
Very interesting. I did either.
Yeah.
But that was Steve's guitar.
And that was another fortuitous thing where somebody ran into my van and I took the money and bought a guitar.
And you bought that guitar.
Insurance money, and I bought that guitar.
Yeah. But we still have that, and I still play that at every Honk concert.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, well you should. Which brings us now to so how did Honk happen? you both ended up in Southern California, I suspect, and you ran into a bunch of other surfer
Yeah.
hippie people.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, for me, it was, I think I'm going to have to say I started it. I started
Yeah,
this
he did,
thing,
because that was 2 years before I came
got
along.
into it. So for me, I was playing 5 nights a week in a place called the Cinnamon Cinder, which was a teenage nightclub
In a different band.
in Long Beach in another band. And I lived in Laguna Canyon, and like on Sundays, we'd have kind of a jam session down there and, drink wine and hang out, and different bands would come down and play, and, we just talk and everything. And I noticed that all the best bands had one good player in it, that the bands were built around that person.
Right.
And so I had this idea, okay, we're playing, all the hits in a nightclub. What if we started a band with all the best players in Orange County that I was aware of anyway, and then just played original music and then see where that takes us?
Well, and that was a much smaller world than now.
Yes.
Too.
Yes.
So you
was-
could know kind of
Yes.
who's who.
That's exactly right. I mean, at
Right.
least as far as all the
Yeah.
working people, because you knew all the
Yeah.
places that people played,
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And I'm sure
Yeah.
people know each other a lot, better than we know today, because
We don't get out.
we
as
don't,
we
well,
said.
we don't hang with all the young people that are hungry, that are,
Well, these are different seasons in life is all.
Well,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
So
it's
who
not
did
about-
who'd you run into first then?
Well, first of all, the bass player that was in my band at the time, called the New Life, was Don Whaley. So he
Okay.
was already, kind of the top musician. And then the other one really was Tristan Bowden, the drummer.
Mhm.
And it's funny because I had met him. I picked him up hitchhiking one time, and he pulled out a harmonica and started playing, and he played great harmonica, which I played
Yeah.
a little harmonica, but all that tone that you get with your throat and all the vibrato and all that kind of stuff, he just knew how to do all that stuff.
Yeah.
And, we talked for a while, and then I dropped him off, and then somehow I just ran into him in another gig. And when I saw him play, I was like, oh my God, this guy he's Ginger Baker,
Yeah. He was just a phenomenal drummer for the time. And he was 19 then or something, right?
Really?
Or 18?
Well, maybe, he's 18.
Because he's like a year younger than we are.
Okay.
Maybe he was 19, because I think
Yeah.
I was 20, I guess.
Yeah.
And so he was the guy. And then also the band that I joined when I first came back from Dallas was called Rhythm and Blues Workshop. And it was a really good guitar, kind of bluesy guitar player, and so I wasn't really concerned about style. To this day, I'm not, to my detriment. I don't care about style. And, as far as being an established artist, people need to know that when they pull up to your place, that it's a burger joint and that it doesn't have Thai food and all this other stuff involved, But anyway, and that's kind of what made Honk eclectic. Was we weren't worried about style, because Don Whaley was a kind of a country guy. His roots were in country. Tris was more similar to mine. He had jazz and rock. And Mike was a bluesy guy, but also in rock. So we weren't concerned about style. We wanted to just play whatever we liked.
In those days, that was not so uncommon.
Yeah, it was.
That's what the radio stations did. They played everything from Timey Kangaroo down to to Girl from Ipanema, really.
Yeah, and you didn't really
Right.
you didn't have a choice to get yourself down too much of a slot, because there wasn't a slot
Right.
where you could hide and be just one thing.
Well, that exposure, though, as both a listener and an artist,
Yeah.
it's irreplaceable.
Yeah.
And there's nowhere else to find it now unless you build it yourself.
Well, yeah,
Right.
but the fact of the matter is, we've been seeing unbelievable new musicians that are
Holy
that
crap.
are only they're a product of today's availability of all the different styles, so
Yeah.
that if somebody's interested, they can hear anything they want.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Well, that's
Yeah.
the good news. You can find it if you look for it.
That's
Yeah.
right.
But it's not like you can go to terrestrial radio like we used to be able
Right.
to. And you could hear, as you said, you could hear anything.
Yeah.
If you listen for an hour on any FM rock
Yeah.
station, you
Right.
could hear all kinds of
Right.
stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, this was before FM too.
Wow.
It was
Wow.
before FM.
No,
because-
it wasn't.
Well, what mine was in Phoenix, Arizona. They didn't have such a thing.
Well,
as
we had
FM. I mean, we had
KPC and
we had 3 radio stations in Phoenix, and they played a lot of cool stuff.
Crazy.
So
yeah.
yeah.
So as you form this band now, and you've got sort of the best of the best And are you gigging and are you kind of thinking you're a band, or are you just kind of,
Well, we got,
Yeah.
we started gigging. First,
It wasn't so hard to get going in those
there
days.
was work to be had, and they didn't require you necessarily, depending on the club, to play the greatest hits. It's just that if people didn't complain or if people showed up, and so in a little bit, this is an interesting thing because you can be taken down a road of least resistance when you first start, which is what makes people like you immediately. And that means doing something that's already popular or something that's really amazingly flashy, like yelling loud or, doing or being really
Absurd.
outlandish in some kind of way. And that draws people's attention. And, or you can just follow your path that's on its own direction and slowly cultivate people who follow you that
happen to like you.
That happen to like you, and they go, "Wow, that's different. I like it." So you immediately there's only a few of those termites in the wall, and you have to wait for them to come out. You have to really just be available and just and stick to what you do, because you will attract those people as long as you stay true to that.
But in those days, that was a big question. It was a big. I don't. You must remember that, selling your soul was kind of a question that we all had to answer yes or no.
right?
Well,
Back then, we knew that. We knew we had to answer that question back when we were 20,
Right.
19 or 20. We knew that was kind of the big deal, because there was Bob Dylan showing us that. And there were a lot of people who made us aware of that question. So that,
but also we lived in an easier time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
right.
the
A
world
time when
was,
it was a black and white question. Are you going to do this or are you going to do that? And
it was easier to be successful by taking that path, because first of all, the audience in the time was also into different,
Right.
and so
so they didn't get mad at you if you sang a bunch of songs
yeah,
that
it was
they'd
like,
never
"Ooh,
heard.
cool,
Yeah.
you're artistic,"
Right.
Yeah.
That's where the culture was going, because we were lucky to be at that time after the war, where all the parents were like, "That's it with all that, with war and depression and
Yeah.
shit. Like, let's give the kids a paradise."
Yeah.
And for what it's worth, I mean, that was an easier time. Now, at that time, I remember it's like, oh man, if you ever had a song on a commercial, that would be the worst possible thing. Now it's like, if you could ever get a song anywhere, that would be the best possible thing. So they've really, the kids today, they have to be, I'd have to say, more grown up in a certain way.
Yeah. And they are.
They definitely are.
And they
yeah.
are. We had a lot of people in our band who were real grumps, and you can't do that anymore.
Right.
We know, we've run into some of the people who are so unbelievably talented, like genius
Right.
level talent, and they're nice.
Yeah. And our son, who's a very successful
Yeah.
musician, he
They're
says, yeah,
nice.
you can't get anywhere these days
Anywhere.
by being an asshole.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
And-
it's funny. My author friends and I know this to be true about the music business as well, are talking about how the business has changed in general because of just digital distribution.
Sure.
And the saying now that we kick around is, it used to be about distribution, and now it's about discovery, because everybody, I can make an album in my
I've got-
basement
Yeah.
in a few days if I have the chops for it.
Uh-huh.
I can do it on GarageBand. I can upload it, and I'm done.
Yeah.
And it doesn't cost me $1 million, and it didn't take me 6 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever. I didn't have to find a label and all of that stuff. However, because everybody else can, the consumer now is drinking out of a fire hose.
Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
well, my saying now
Yeah.
is music business. It's now become an oxymoron.
It always kind of was, though, wasn't it?
Well,
Well-
no, because when we signed, I mean, we're living in a house that we bought with an advance.
Right now, this house.
Okay, well, that is a different world, isn't it?
So there you go. I mean, I could go on and on, but that's
Yeah.
that's my final punch to the face there.
Yeah.
Okay, well, very interesting. Okay, well, back to Honk. So you guys are playing, and with the pickup band of the best of the best. And at what point now, Five Summer Stories is first, right?
That was the
Is that the
first.
first album?
That
Yeah.
was the first album that happened 2 years into the band, actually, though.
Yeah.
So how did that arc happen? How do you
Well,
get from
Yeah.
that where you found the musicians in Orange County to this place where you actually had a signed deal?
Yeah.
In a fairly, to me as an Orange County kid, Five Summer Stories was a very big deal.
Yeah. Well,
It wasn't at first.
no, it wasn't at first. It's just like when you were signing the Declaration of Independence, everybody's just like a bunch of guys in a room. You know, it didn't seem like it was going to be.
We'll be lucky if this thing lasts for 15 years. You know, they probably.
Well,
really.
which
Well,
it
that's
did, but
interesting.
basically, one thing happened. First of all, is the guitar player quit. The blues guy quit because he was not open to a lot of different kinds of music. He wanted it to be a heavier style, and we were doing.
He was embarrassed.
Yeah, he was
He was
embarrassed.
embarrassed by Steve wanting to do Lambert, Hendricks, and Ross, and some of the jazz stuff. He was
And
embarrassed by
Dave
that.
Brubeck songs and
Yeah.
stuff, you know, and so he quit. And at that point, I knew Richard Steckel, the guitar player and writer, and he happened to be in Vietnam. And I knew he was supposed to come back in some months. So I wrote him a letter and said, hey, we've got this great band. We'd love to have you play. He would have, I think, been my first choice if he would have been around when the band started.
But he was already over there.
Because I didn't really know him, but I'd seen him a couple of times, like playing at a party or something like that. I was going, man, this guy sounds like Eric Clapton, you know?
Yeah, he's pretty unmissable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I wrote him and then got a letter back and he said, you know, this is what a great, opportunity. I'm happy to do it. I'll see you when I get back. So then he came back and joined the band, and it took the band up another level because he's such a high quality writer. And he's a great guitar player, but I mean, his writing was just like,
it still is just,
yeah, it's still that kind of thing. You're like, God, if only I could do that. And, so that took it up a notch. And then it just so happened that Greg McGillivray, who lived in Laguna, some of us went to Newport Harbor High School, myself included, Richard.
Okay.
And so he was going to make that movie, and he knew that he wanted to have some local musicians. And so Honk was the sort of
young guy,
the young, the
band.
Yeah, the young prince, the young princess of Orange County, and he liked the band, and he contacted our manager, and just basically said, "Yeah, let's do this thing." And it was simple. He just said, I think he gave us some money. I don't remember. Yeah,
he did. But it's not like Five Summer Story, or it's not like he was a big deal at the time. He wasn't. Right. He was just kind of on a par with these guys at the time. I wasn't in the band then. He was just kind of trying to make his dreams come true. Yeah. And he didn't really
have. He was kind of doing out there with what Bruce Brown was doing at the time.
But
right?
Bruce Brown was already a big deal.
Yeah.
And was Greg McGillivray.
Oh, Bruce had been around for 10 years. He set the course that everybody followed.
Right.
And I was a huge Bruce Brown fan. I mean, I used to have posters of his movies when I was in elementary school up on my wall. Right.
Yeah, but Greg would just kind of film these things on his camera, and then he'd trot into a school gymnasium and put him on and play a record player and narrate the movie. And it was that level. And so Five Summer Stories was a big step up for him, but he wasn't there yet either.
But he'd had some success. He'd had a couple of movies out. I mean, he was farther along than we were.
He was a hard worker.
Yeah, but anyway, he just basically hired us to do it, and it was an easy job for us because it was what's called wild tracking, which is
they didn't need to know what they were doing. In other words,
no, it didn't. The music didn't have to fit a picture. He cut the picture to the music.
I was going to ask you how that.
So I mean, because it's like porno, it's like there's no real plot. It's just you can put it together any way you want, and it's just the music sets the mood, And so he basically gave us a legal pad and said, okay, I need 5.5 minutes of music for the North Shore, maybe a kind of a country style. I need something for Bonsai Pipeline, something driving and exciting. I need blah, blah, blah. So we would just get together, and we were not taking it seriously because we were serious about our songwriting. And this was just like, well, for Tris and I, it was kind of a big deal because we were surfers. And so this is really cool for us.
Yeah. And it was an opportunity also to get paid to be in the studio, which was pretty cool.
God, yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So, it was relatively easy. And then there was a couple, he wanted songs. I mean, this is the thing. I've worked with Greg for many years since that. You probably know,
Right.
did a lot of IMAX music for him, but he always liked music almost as much as picture. I mean, even though his main thing is a cinematographer, he'd rather have a song. He was putting songs in movies before that became de rigueur. He was, so he did pick a few songs that we already had and put them in the movie after he got to know us. It was like,
I like that song.
Don't Let Your Goodbye Stand or Love You Baby. Those are perfect for my movie. So those were already written.
Okay.
But we were working on that stuff, and that was our serious stuff. And the other stuff is like, pipeline. Let's see. Then I think the thing was, let's see if we can write this in less time it takes than to play it.
So a song like Blue of Your Backdrop, was that sort of made to order or not?
That was actually made for the film.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah. And I don't remember.
Because there's not much song there. It's mostly just kind of dreaming, kind of
Well, you're right. Although the version of it with lyrics, that's pretty heavy content.
It is. Well,
meaningful content.
That's good because Richard was in the band.
Yeah.
But you know what? There is that line.
You can do both. Is the point.
Yeah. Right.
Well, then it's up to the director, basically.
Yeah. Because I don't know if I don't even know about this, but Greg always had an environmental interest. He was always interested in the environment, and Blue of Your Backdrop is a kind of an environmental song. So I don't know if that was a prompt, a writing prompt.
I don't remember the prompt. And the thing I was going to say is, even in that case, there is the line at the end that's with no God above, guess we're all stuck with the things we love. Well, he took it out. He did the final mix for the film, which, by the way, he's about to re-release. Greg McGillivray did, and Jim Freeman. And he was like, we can't have that line in the movie, because that's just too it's offensive to too many people, which is, I can understand it.
Especially in those days.
But now it's interesting because he's re-releasing Five Summer Stories because the 50-year anniversary is coming up.
Yeah.
And he's re-edited it all. And I helped him with a little bit of the music because he stuck with the music that he mixed, and it's a terrible mix. Because he was interested more in boom, there's a thing over there, and and it's like, I can't even, it's very peculiar.
I hope you're a part of that.
Well, no. I'm not a part of it. The only reason I helped him really was because he was in the theater and he knew he wanted to go da 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 ba da 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 ba 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 ba, real super stereo. And suddenly he discovered that his whole system was not stereo any longer. So I had to go in there and help him rewire the theater.
So this was recently.
Yeah,
right?
This was 4 months ago.
Yeah, right.
Well, I saw the Facebook posts about the showing of the movie. What was it, at the Port Theater, or not the Port Theater, the Mesa Theater or something?
Oh no, you mean the original?
Well, there was a thing several months ago, just a few months ago, where there was kind of a Newport Harbor High School.
Oh yeah,
right.
Union kind of a deal where Honk was involved. Or
that's right. That's right. It was Harbor. I don't know where they showed the film because we weren't there for that. We played that night. It was like a weird reunion, like a multi-generational reunion.
Yeah. That was in October. Yeah.
Which we thought, we thought it's going to be, it was fun.
It was fun.
It really was fun. It was good.
And I'm sorry to fast forward this. We're going to have to do a longer, slower walk through this history, because Honk is an unbelievable legacy. And people in Orange County that were there, those of us who were there, all feel just like we were all part of a tribe. And you guys wrote the soundtrack for it, and it was a beautiful thing. It still is. So there's that. But anyway, leaving all the goopy fan stuff behind. So what happened to get from then the McGillivray Five Summer Stories to the Clay Figures album, which to me was another revelation of, to your point about not having styles, this is the most eclectic thing since the Grateful Dead. That was like, I don't even know what this is, but it's good.
Yeah. That was what they were working on for their real music.
Okay.
That was, and they were working on it simultaneously to the movie, actually. Was
Okay.
that first Clay Figures, what we call the Clay Figures album? That was what they were working on. That's why Don't Let Your Goodbye Stand and Love You Baby were also on that album, because
So I have a side bet with a friend of mine. There's a version of Pipeline that's on both albums.
uh-huh.
Same masters, or did you re-record it?
I'm gonna have to listen to tell you. I don't know.
I doubt that they
So you can't solve my bet.
Yeah.
Well, I can, but I just can't do it right now.
Yeah.
It's possible that it's
because we do have
probably
the album.
remixed.
It does sound marginally different to me.
I would guess it's remixed because when we were doing the album,
You can tell by the solos. You
Well,
can tell
no.
by the solos. Yeah, because the solos would have been totally different. I mean, it wasn't like those guys would learn their solos and play the same solo every time. It would, so they're
no, but it could be remixed.
it could be remixed. Yes.
Yeah.
It could be the same version of a different mix.
It's the same music playing and just
All
a
right.
different mix.
But this
Sorry,
is all.
anyway, I didn't mean to get into the weeds.
Yeah, no,
on
I mean
it.
but it's kind of fun. I mean, we don't mind answering.
I think it is. But
Yeah.
so the Clay Figures album now has these fabulous songs, all kinds of songs. Again, this is where Buckeye Jim came from.
Uh-huh.
Caught on a Greyhound. Circles in Sand. Is that in there?
Yeah.
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 I mean, good heavens. This is, I mean, really, this is groundbreaking stuff. So tell me about that. How did that come to be?
Well-
Because that was on 20th Century,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which was kind of a big deal.
Yeah. Well, the reason was because the 5 Summer Stories, the song Pipeline Sequence got to #1 on K-Poi in Hawaii.
Oh, in Hawaii, sure.
And so at that time, like the labels are going, hey, what's happening? Nobody got a #1 record anywhere like you can
Yeah.
today without some support from a record label. And so labels were like, hey, these guys are already halfway there. All we have to do is sign them,
And all organic.
and all organic.
Well, no, I mean, you're having reached #1 was kind of an organic thing.
It was.
Yeah, it was.
It
It
really
wasn't
was.
labels throwing money against it.
No, it was just people
it
calling
was-
in and going, play
yeah,
that song again.
We
Right.
like that music. Yeah.
And so
They
that's how we got signed.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So when you got signed, were you signed with a finished product or
No.
with demos or what?
No, they let us self-produce
Pretty much.
Oh,
They
really?
let us self-produce with
with one caveat, which is when well, you could tell this. I'm
Well,
doing all the talking.
No, it wasn't. And by then I was in the band, so I can pipe up on this, and which was that they did this one. They mostly did this lovely album, and the guy came in. Russ Regan came in and listened to the whole thing and said, "I hate the whole second side. You got to write a whole new set of songs for the second side." And so they did. And some of the songs that he threw out were absolutely gorgeous. And one of these days we're going to,
It's more Beach Boy. I mean, the other side was more.
yeah.
I mean, just as far as like the same
beautiful
thing.
stuff.
Yeah, it's
It's
just
very-
more beautiful than it is
yeah.
edgy.
And
Oh,
it's
that's the
very,
stuff I want to hear that.
yeah, you do. I mean,
It's
it's
actually-
just really, I think it's really, really neat stuff. But,
Did you ever see that album that was released at one point? Wasn't
oh
it?
yeah.
I bought a 2 CD version of the Clay Figures
Yes.
record.
That's
Are those
But
tunes? on there?
no, that was different stuff. That was from the unreleased subsequent album.
That's what I thought. It sounded
Yes.
more like it was
'Cause it didn't have
was,
Tree Turner.
other takes from the Epic
Yes.
record.
so. Did that ever stuff never
So
get
that
written?
stuff never got put out. That's why. I
Oh
wanted us
wow!
to
You
put
need to
that
go
out.
find that.
Yeah,
Please.
yeah, we have it.
We're
Oh,
keeping it until
brilliant.
it's really valuable.
We have it. No, I mean, now I know that he didn't realize that stuff was never released. I mean, and it was
Okay, well,
really jazzy and really, really kind of,
I'm certain that you have a lot of fans that would love to hear that.
yeah.
And then actually yesterday, Beth walked in and I was listening. A person that I know had called me or emailed me. We're in the modern times now. And he said, I have got a tape of you guys playing at the theater in Laguna, which was
It was 73 or something like
a
that.
legendary thing of us playing at the theater. We used to play at midnight. And it was a concert where every kid.
Did you know about that?
At the theater on
Yeah.
Coast Highway.
Coast Highway.
The only theater in town. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh well, that's the one. Yeah.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
Game
and everybody-
Edwards Theater. You
everybody
guys
for-
played there?
Yeah, we played
At
at
midnight.
midnight.
Oh, see,
And-
I wasn't allowed to go there at that time.
Well, yeah, I was going to say everybody from age 12, to probably 18 went to this thing. And if you were under 16, you just snuck out and got down. There was back in the days
Yeah.
when there wasn't so much fear.
Yeah. And you snuck out your bedroom window at midnight and went down there, and that was the whole thing.
Wow, I'm
Yeah.
so sorry to have missed that.
So anyway, I have a tape of that. And then we have a lot of demos of stuff that we recorded that just never made it to.
Yeah.
So-
including that one. So anyway, to answer your question, we had to record a whole new side of that, and then he liked that. Okay. And then that was the album that was put out. But
Yeah.
that second side was written, and that wasn't the heartfelt, break your heart kind of songs. It was just written to fill that bill.
So
Recorded.
Russ Regan, who I think ended up, wasn't he at Warner's or something after that? Didn't he go somewhere? Or Epic?
Russ Regan?
Russ Regan. Yeah. He was with 20th Century, right? Yes. We got that picture of our signing
So-
card. He was with,
But I don't know where he ended up after that.
I think he
Anyway.
he ended up somewhere else. But anyway,
yeah, he did.
But so he shit can side 2, and you
Yeah.
rewrote side 2, and that is the Clay Figures album as we know it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And did you work with people like Mark Turnbull because they were buddies, or how did that come about?
Yeah. Mark and I were best friends in the 9th grade before I had to move to Texas.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So we hit, we met on the basketball court and I asked him what kind of music he liked. And he said, well, I kind of like jazz and stuff like that. And I said, oh, I know, and I started rattling off all the names because I wasn't really into it. I just knew it was part of me.
Yeah, it was like his father who had been listening to jazz.
Yeah. And so I had all the album titles and everything. And he was like, whoa,
Mhm.
I can't believe somebody out here in the basketball court. So, and really at that time, I wasn't a musician. When I first met him, I
Yeah.
wasn't a musician. I hadn't moved to Texas yet. And he was already playing crazy, unbelievable guitar.
And writing wonderful songs.
Yeah, songs that
Yeah.
were like something that a 30,
Excellent.
30-year-old
Yeah.
should be writing. And so at that point, I just went over to his house all the time and he'd play me these songs. And I just go, what the,
Oh, yeah.
And so then
Well,
when I
he's
got back
pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
when I got back from Texas, we hooked up again because even without the music, we're just pals. I mean, we have something.
Kind of got each other.
Yeah, we resonate. We
Oh, that's cool.
have a sense of humor and a certain
Yeah.
interest.
So Mark was always part of the group, and he would come up with these songs, and I think three songs on that album.
And I think he wrote them for the band, really, because he was
Yeah.
writing really more kind of Broadway style songs.
Mhm.
And I think when the band came along, I think he saw an opportunity to
To have somebody cover his songs.
cover his songs. And I think it was one of the few, now that I think back on it, it's probably one of the few times he actually wrote purposefully as
Well,
opposed
he did Greyhound. He did
Yeah.
Buckeye
Mon-
Jim, right?
and money slips
And
through
money
my
slips
fingers.
through my fingers.
Oh, I forgot it. Yes, of course.
Yeah.
You know what? I didn't realize that he was so involved in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. And all good tunes, great tunes.
Yeah.
Oh, and he had
Yeah.
other songs too that we
And-
did. I mean, when we
and-
first got together, we didn't have many original songs. We
Because they were
wanted to
just
be,
starting writing. Oh, well, Richie had been writing a little bit, and he was pretty prolific. But Steve was writing too.
no,
But
we
they didn't have that.
No, but before
deep
Richie got in the
bench.
band, we did a lot of Mark songs because we wanted original songs, but we didn't have many because none of us were real serious writers yet.
Right.
Except, and then when Richard got back, he
Wrote a bunch.
wrote a bunch, and
Yeah.
he's more of a writer. I mean,
He just writes all the time.
and he's
Oh, yeah.
he's
Well,
got the gift.
He is like that, though.
But he still
that's
is.
just who he is. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was just one of those guys that could just hit the basket from,
yeah.
and the rest of us are just going, huh.
How did what?
You work at it, but you never quite get to where it just
Yeah.
feels like it's a nicely lubricated machine.
Yeah, right.
So the next chapter of Honk world from a fan point of view is the next time we sort of see Honk. Now you've got this album on Epic. Now we're going to fast forward a year or two maybe.
Yeah.
Album out on Epic. You are on a stadium tour. I saw you at Anaheim Stadium opening for, I think, Chicago and the Beach Boys.
Uh,
Am I right? You
I don't know
opened
if we
that
did.
show,
I
right?
don't know if we did the Anaheim one. We did San Diego.
You did San Diego.
We did Long Beach.
Okay.
We
Opening
broke
for-
up just before the Anaheim.
just before the Anaheim one. I think the Anaheim one was
Okay.
Yeah, because we have posters
newspaper.
for that.
And I have a newspaper clipping that said that show would have been longer, but Honk.
But Honk, broke up.
Oh.
Yeah.
So,
It is.
so
Anyway.
when that happens, when you have this all of a sudden, you're not playing clubs, you're opening stadiums. What does that feel like? Is that well, this is what I've been working for all my life? Or is it a more like, what the hell just happened to me?
Well, both. It's both, and in different different amounts for different people. I think it was both, and I think that's true. Like a couple of the guys in the band, it was just too big of a culture shock to deal with. And some of the people in the band were just fun. We're having a great time. But it was a little bit hard also because in those days, we never got to the point where we were, the headlining act. So it never got to the point where people liked what we did because it was us. They liked us because of what we did. And so we were kind of stuck in this 1.5 hour set of tunes
Of your greatest,
of our greatest hits that we
of the most attractive to people who don't know you.
right.
Well, that's the job of an opening act, though, right? I mean,
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
But-
it's also, you're trying to make yourself popular. So it's like I was saying, you're starting
Yeah.
to make those decisions. Like, I'm going to do this stuff because
that works.
it kind of goes against the grain, but I need to do this to make the next step.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get to be artistically assertive later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Supposedly. And
If
that's
you
what
can-
we already heard, but always heard. But it
We
was
didn't
hard,
find out.
It was hard to believe it.
Well, I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you, but your story arc is so incredible. This is, first of all, 6 musicians that are really gifted and have known each other now for decades and been through thick and thin, up
Half
and down.
a century.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Half a
well,
century.
I get it, but who's counting, right?
Greg McGillivray is.
Yeah.
So how does now we're going to shift into the writing part of the conversation. How have you adapted, or have you? Does the process change now that you are this age rather than what you were doing when you were writing songs for the Epic record?
Well, I think so. I mean, I think you go, Steve.
Well,
We still both write,
we still write. And
but we still have to answer that question. Do we want to do what the audience is going to expect, or do we want to, make our own dreams come true? And the answer is yes. We do both.
Right.
We just
Right.
we try to do some new stuff, and we do a lot of the old stuff. So we are just a little bit easier on ourselves as far as answering those questions and trying to make it good.
it's harder though, in a certain way, because when you're younger, everything's about the horizon. You're doing things that are fueling you towards the future. And you're thinking, this is, I'm on my way somewhere. And the thing that gets harder when you get older is like to really the chances of being in your 70s and breaking through and being a big star. That's part of that thing that drives you. It's kind of cut off. It's just like being an athlete in a certain way. It's like, no, you're not going to get on the Dodgers anymore. So you can go out on the weekend and play baseball and have a good time. But then you really need to dig down to, and I think this is what Beth and I are both doing, is like, I just got to get back to where I was when I first started, which is I'm not worried about what anybody thinks per se. It's more a reflection of what my spirit is. Because it's just like, we have grandkids now and they're little and they're just so full of energy. They're so positive. it's almost sad to watch something so pure and know that it's going to get stuck in the dryer, spinning around and around. And that happens to you in life. And then it's how you deal with that. And then when you get to a certain point to where you don't have to be in the dryer any longer, then you're faced with that existential, then why am I here? And, to me, that's, the last frontier.
What's
Well,
the
it's
most?
just
Oh,
it's
go
just
ahead.
it's kind of digging the soulful nuggets out of yourself, just
Yes.
just trying to write something that makes you cry, or
Yes.
trying to write something that's so important to you that it just knocks you out, and then go, okay, I don't care who believes in this. I'm just going to, run this one up the flagpole and see if anybody salutes, kind of thing. And that's, I think that's pretty much. So in that way, it's not so different than how we really started out.
It's just the difference is the energy.
Yeah, right.
Because when you feel the wind at your back, it pushes you along because you're making your life. Now it's like, okay, we got our house, we got our yard, everything's set up, and you don't have that sort of like the hunger I was talking about with kids. I don't know the young people because they're out there all the time whacking away, and it's like, we've done that. We're done with that stage of our life.
Right. But it's not I guess I would characterize it as, that's not something that I would say is a bad thing. I think it's just part of the matriculation through the process, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. You'd know that too. Cause I guess
Well, it was nice. It was nice to be around at a time when other people took care of the stuff that you don't particularly want to do, which is selling.
Right. Right.
You had a manager and you had an A&R department, you had a promotion department, you had all these people
agent
that respected your art and tried to, and within that realm, there was both of those things happening. Some people really wanted you to do good stuff. Right. Some people wanted you to do whatever sells, but you could, you would find your way towards the people that resonated with.
You had people that would advocate for you as opposed to having to go out and be your own drummer.
And so here's the problem. Beth and I both share this thing of like, we don't know if we're any good. I mean, we know what good is, and we know we're not that. The things that just make us go, wow, that's amazing. And of course, you also learn over time that the things that come easy to you, you don't really realize how good they are because you didn't have to work on them. That personal thing that you have that you can't see because you've been looking at that color for too long. And other people see it as, when, how do you do that? People talk to me all the time. How do you write a song? It's like, I don't know. I just do it. It's no big deal. Why would you care? I mean, it's so easy. And
that's an interesting turn of a phrase, though. You've been looking at that color for so long, you can't see it anymore because it is kind of how it is. And I was going to ask about process, and I'm going to try to ask this in as non-banal a way as I can. Do you these days, do you get up thinking, well, I want to put together a CD for next year. So I want to get 10, 11, 12 songs put together that I really like. So I'm going to write. Or do you write when you just damn feel like it? And I am motivated because this thing, something touched me. How does it work for you?
For me, I write when I get so upset that I know I have to write, and I'm kind of impossible for myself to be around. And I realize that I've got to get something out. And I
know that feeling.
And sometimes I don't know what it is. And I will sit down and I will say one word and I go, okay, I start from here. What do I mean?
Okay.
Wow. And so that's how I start. And then I try to make each note that I play on the guitar a pretty note and have the next one be pretty, and then start from one thing.
That's beautifully said. Articulating the process to me is the most difficult. This is the most difficult question I could be asking either of you. So that was brilliant. Well done.
But that's one way of doing it. And then there's the other way of doing it where it just kind of plops right into your head, almost full. You almost dream it. And sometimes Steve does this.
I've had those, but I'd say the majority for me is just I play. I'm just playing.
Yeah.
And if I happen to be in the right mood, something that catches my ear will pull me down the black hole of having to write a damn song
Yeah,
because it's so
right.
hard.
So you're playing and you happy accident kind of. Oh, that's
Yeah.
I mean,
Get
I
an
try.
earworm.
I'm always
Get
trying to
some kind of earworm.
improvise.
Yeah.
You know, and just something will hit me, and I'll go, "Wow!" And I have I always had a cassette. I mean, I have a drawers full of cassettes of ideas.
Mm.
That I didn't have the energy to see them through, and a lot of times,
You'll go back. And
it's just like
something.
da 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 da. I mean, that's da 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 da. Make this whole huge thing out of something. Speaking of banal,
Yeah.
and so any good idea, any little idea you have, if you have the wherewithal, the spirit.
Yeah.
To put it together, you can make something good. You just have to have that thing that makes you not question why you're doing it, or I'm too tired, or have something else to do, or all those things.
Well, it's usually, like I said, for me, I think the perfect song that is the illustration of this was my song, I Know. Because I realized I had to write a song. There were so many upsetting things going on in my life at that point that I had to do something. So I got out my guitar and I tuned it, da, da, da. And I went, okay, there's the beginning of it. Tuning. I was tuning, da, da, da. And then I was saying, I know. And then that was the beginning of that song. And then I just went on from there, and I wrote out how I felt from there. And it just started. And that was my game, is that I had to make that into something. And
where can your fans, such as myself, where can we hear that? Can we go to Spotify or something?
Yeah, you can.
You can go to Spotify, or you can go to Apple Music or whatever.
Yeah.
Just look up Beth Fitchet-Wood.
And it's called I Know.
I want to hear that. That sounds beautiful. But I understand how that feels, though.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you also, both of you, about the titles of songs, the titles of books, the titles of movies. Titles mean something, I think, as an artist. I mean, to me, and I like to come up with a theme and a feeling and a title that I can write to. And I'm doing long form stuff, so I have to be kind of in the same zone for 6 or 7 months at a time. Whereas you don't necessarily have to do that in the music business, but you can. Do you do that? Does that resonate with you? What I just said? I mean, do you come up with a title sometimes and think, "Oh, that's cool. I want to find some music that gets there."
Not very often. I mean, I always am thinking of good song titles, but and sometimes I'll write a song because I tend to write music. I mean,
you go music first?
I tend to write music first, but I'm thinking all the time. I mean, I'm also a person that's really engaged with the world and trying to see it in my own unique way.
In some perspective.
Not I don't want to be following anybody who's telling me what I should be thinking. So I'm always thinking.
He's usually kind of stepping outside of humanity and going, well, isn't that absurd? Why in the world are they doing things like that? And then he'll write a song about it. And
I mean, really, I would say like Randy Newman or somebody like that. That's who I resonate with.
Yeah. Really well said. I've never really thought about that. Steve Wood's songs are very much that way.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Wow.
And there's
Another Light. I don't know if you remember that song, Another Light.
Oh, definitely. Sure.
He's talking about, well, isn't that absurd that all these people are trying to invent some kind of belief system that,
And I'm still,
That's still one of my favorites, by the way. I love that song.
Thank you. Well, I have a new CD coming out now. It's going to be out in 2 weeks. Out
for the Honk gig. It's going to be out.
It's not out. It's in. It'll be in my garage.
Yeah.
But it's the first album I've made since 1980, because all that time between then and now, I've been writing, but it's a long story. But I mean, basically, Beth and I were working together, and then we decided to have a family, and rather than having 2 incomes, we needed 1 income. And then that's when I started going on the road with people, and then doing film music,
and I was taking
and doing commercials and doing writing and producing people, because I am a producer. I'm a person who
he makes very visual music.
Yes, you
and I feel like I'm an architect, like I want to sit at the board and drafting things and trying things and moving them around. And as an artist, you're more like a carpenter, where you're out there actually pounding the thing together. You know
what? Do you guys have a couple of more minutes? Or ordinarily, I try to keep these things to about an hour. But if you have a couple of more minutes,
sure.
This is I don't
Uh-oh.
want to let you go when we're on this trajectory.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Because
You're the editor.
There's a lot of crap you can cut
I
out.
guess that's true.
Yeah.
So, as a producer, we haven't even touched on, you did years of work as the musical director for Kenny Loggins' band.
Yeah.
I saw you play many, many times when Kenny Loggins was on tour.
Yeah.
You did that for a long, long time.
10 years, something like that.
For the audience that may not be familiar with how music works, would you give us just a minute about what a musical director does? Because the next time the lay person goes to a show, keep your eyes open for this, because musical directors make that thing happen.
Yeah, it's different in different situations. If you're playing with, some like in the old days when you had Frank Sinatra, you had a music director. Frank didn't do anything except come in and sing.
Right.
So basically, a music director was really responsible for everything you saw on stage. In Kenny's case, he knows every detail about everything that's going on.
He has a real vision, and it's a very particular vision.
And I mean, just as an example, often we would do a show, and then in the morning you'd wake up and there'd be a yellow legal pad paper, a piece of paper saying, "Don't play that chord on the third." He'd go through, and then he would also he'd do that for the lighting. No blue on the bridge. I wish that. So yeah. He had a real.
He's paying attention.
He's paying so much attention. I mean, more attention than I could ever pay myself.
He has a lot of creative energy.
Yeah. And so, but we resonated. And also when I worked for him, and this is part of the thing I was talking about earlier, is like, okay, I want to do a good job. I want to help this guy. And I knew what he was trying to do. And as an example, whenever Kenny would take a break, the band would tend to play some real complicated thing, because it's like, oh, we're jazz guys, because these are all really established guys. And it's like, God, we have to keep playing this damn thing over and over. That's so simple, because Kenny wanted everything very precise in a certain kind of way. And so, and I was always like, this makes him feel uncomfortable because
he's not
included.
Yeah.
And in a certain kind of way, that was what the band was trying to tell him. But at the same time, he always tried to travel with the band because he wanted to be part of the band. And I've always felt that.
So did you do something about that?
Well, I mean, so at least he knew that I was the guy that understood what he was trying to do, and that it wasn't making me angry, or because I was sort of halfway between. I was also an artist, but I had stopped trying to sell myself because honest to God, I don't care. I don't want to get up in front of a bunch of people and try to convince them how good I am, because I'm not sure if I'm any good. And I don't have that thing. It's hard for me to watch the audience and play because I get distracted by an audience, and that's part of the reason why I ended up being a writer and a producer and all that stuff, because I don't want to deal with that particular thing. Kenny was a guy who really wanted to be popular. And that's not
he played to the audience.
And it's not, and he's so damn talented and so good at what he did. It's not a value judgment. That's just who he was born as.
Oh, no. There are roles to play in a band.
Yeah.
There always are. It almost sounds to me like that you were playing the role that Jimmy was before.
Yeah. Maybe not.
Well, he was a producer, and he was kind of didn't care about the audience so much.
No. Because Jimmy, they broke up because Jimmy was pushy and told Kenny what to do. He was that kind of a music director.
Oh, well, no, that's not you, but that's not your personality.
Yeah. So my job was really to represent Kenny when he wasn't there.
Oh, okay. Well,
and so that was like, okay, we can have rehearsals and he doesn't have to be there because I know his material inside out.
But also, he would be the first person that the musicians, if he needed a new drummer or something,
I'd audition people.
He'd audition people. He'd be the first line of defense of a lot of different things.
Very high level of trust.
Yeah, there's a
very high.
It's hard. Yeah, it was hard to. It was hard to find somebody like me who would put up with his idiosyncrasies that anybody that's really motivated and has a vision will have.
Yeah.
And we were pals. We played racquetball, everywhere we went, we ran, we did.
They're still pals.
Yeah, we're still pals.
Yeah. So as a producer then, what are you particularly proud of as a producer of what you have put out there?
Yeah, good question.
Well, I would say, well,
That was a really funny expression you just had on your face. Did I ask you a bad question?
no, because there's,
It's
a good question.
I wouldn't know.
I would
what
say,
that is.
no, I would say,
That's a good question.
I would say Mario.
Really?
Yeah. A Greek tenor, Mario Frangoulis.
Okay.
And I had done a couple of films with Sting, as you know, and
Right.
and
Not with Sting.
well, I use his music.
Yeah, use his music.
Yeah, but also he wrote a song and I produced that song.
Exactly.
So, you know, we worked through the mail, as it were. We didn't sit in a room together, but we worked through Miles Copeland,
Yeah.
his manager.
And he had
Right.
trust in Steve to give him all of his musical.
Yeah, and let me do whatever I wanted with it. So, but anyway, so this is like a 4-hour show if we get into all the depth. But
Oh,
I
we're
don't
going to come back. I can already see that this is going to be volume 2 and 3. So
Yeah.
keep
so- But I would say that particular one was a great achievement because, first of all, I thought the artist was really, really good. And I thought that I did something that brought out the best in him, that everything he's done without me was never as good because he has an idea of who he is. And I was able to see who
To realize it.
to realize
To
what,
realize it.
because I think he had, in general, I try to not make anybody what they aren't. I try to dig out the thing that's attractive about them and emphasize that. And a lot of times they don't know, just like any artist, like I say, these are the things that come to you and you're just like, I don't know what people like about me, or I have an attitude that I have to be this certain kind of way. And it's like, no, actually what's attractive about you
Is a different
is the
thing.
other thing.
Yeah.
Is the fact that you're not formal, you're really funny, and you're,
Yeah.
you know, and he's a classical singer, so he thinks he has to be all stuffy and everything. But
Right.
no, you're funnier than hell. You do a better Sammy Davis Jr. imitation than anybody I know. You know, and you're Greek. You know,
So
and
this is one of your favorite albums.
I think
Yeah.
you know, if I had to pull out something and you know, someday and somebody said, "What did you do?" I would say it's really cool. And I worked with Peter Asher. He was the executive producer, and it was on Sony Classical. And you know, I used big orchestra and choirs and children's choirs and all my friends and
wonderful compositions. But you know, Peter Asher found some.
I mean, this was
Great.
A+ material. And I wrote a couple songs, and one of them was number one in Greece because it was good. It was really good. And you know, and then I worked with what's his name from the Moody Blues,
Justin Hayward.
yeah, I'd done a film with Justin Hayward, which is a whole other story. You know, it was the same thing where I was going to use Moody Blues music. And then I started talking to him, you know, over the phone and email and stuff. And he was like, I said, would you be willing to play guitar? And he said, are you kidding? I would love to. Nobody ever hires me. I want to be a guitar player, but nobody hires me. So I sent him a bunch of.
Nobody would think to
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. You know, so I sent him a bunch of tapes and he played on it and sent it back. And I said,
Beautiful.
it's great. And he said, give me more. And so then we became pals, you know. And then when this next thing came along, we need a classical, a pop song that sounds classical. And I just finished this film, and Nights in White Satin was the theme song. It's like, we'll do Nights in White Satin. And then I got somebody to write a lyric in Italian. And then we went over to Italy, actually, and Beth and I, and recorded Justin. And, you know,
so it was a duet, Justin and this fellow,
and
Mario Frangoulis.
Frangoulis. And we spent a month in Athens working on this. And then we went to Prague and used the orchestra there. And it was just like one of those.
So cool.
Super cool.
Where can we hear this?
I'm sure you can. Yeah. Mario Frangoulis, Frangoulis.
Okay.
You have to play it back to get that spelling.
Yeah, exactly.
But Sometimes I Dream is the name of the album, and it's out there. It's on Sony Classical, and it was moderately successful. It was bigger overseas than it was here, and you know. And
these little jewels, though, these are the artistic jewels that are not only fun to talk about.
Yeah,
they're fun to know the background story of, so that when we hear it as fans, you can hear exactly what you were just speaking about.
Yeah, right. I mean, this would be an interesting thing to do, is like to take an album like that and take it apart, because that whole thing. I mean, Mario he'd already been signed, and I'm just going to pretend like we're going to talk for 4 hours, because at this rate we are. But he'd already been signed to Sony Classical. They spent $1 million on him doing an album of Diane Warren songs. Totally the
Mhm.
wrong thing for this guy.
Mhm.
And, and I heard it was terrible, and they knew it was terrible. And so Peter Asher was his executive producer. And they were like, yeah. And Andrea Bocelli was kind of happening then. So there's like, yeah,
This was at 2000, right around then.
so he could be a
Right.
crossover guy. Who could we get to produce him? Who can do like orchestra music and pop and rock? And it was interesting because I'm not sure, but Peter Asher was, and then Miles Copeland was his manager, who managed Sting.
Because he'd been working
And
with
so
Sting's
it's like, I
music.
don't get around. I don't know that many people, but they're both in the same room at the same time. And I think Miles Copeland brought it up. He says, we just did a film with this guy, Steve Wood, and he took a lot of Sting music and used strings and orchestra, and it sounds great. It didn't sound corny, and it's really good. And then Peter Asher was like, I know Steve Wood. I produced a Kenny Loggins Christmas album. And
There was some.
and there he was. And
Yeah.
we got to be kind of friends during the time. I was never the kind of guy that gets friends with somebody and then tries to make a career move out of it.
No.
But he remembered me. And so they both went, well, you know him and I know him, so he must be somebody. So let's hire him to do it. It's like, oh, these are the only two guys I even know in the business, but they just happened to be together in the room at that time.
Oh my God, that's awesome. Okay, so here's what we need to do.
Yeah.
Can we do this again? Can we do part 2 some other
Yeah.
time?
And do what you planned to do in the first place.
Well, we
No,
got
I
into that a little bit.
I wrote down a bunch of questions I wanted to ask you. That's this whole other chapter of your lives, because the audience, Steve's done what, 25 IMAX films?
No,
We've lost count.
30 or 35.
No, it's anyway,
Yeah.
it's in the high numbers.
Stupid number of awards that you've won. I stupid only in terms of pure just numerical value,
Yeah.
not because it wasn't, you know what I mean.
You have me at stupid.
There's a lot to talk about, and real artists that can articulate the process and can revisit where you've been, what you do. I think these things are fascinating, and maybe it's just because I'm becoming an old man myself. But
I think they always have been, because sometimes people don't really realize that the only difference between a creative person and a non-creative person is the creative person takes it and just goes with it.
well, yeah,
sometimes.
yes, and you allow yourself the freedom to do it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And
you two certainly did, and I'm so grateful that you documented it, and that we have 3 Honk albums to show for it.
Yeah.
That we have a body of work yet to come. And with that said, I have to do. We have a tradition where there's a little closing thing that we have to do.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
So at the writer's bar, we have 3 quick shots before we go. Now, you don't have to take actual shots, but I am going to ask you 3 quick questions. So here they come. You ready?
Yeah.
And you take them. Either one can answer, both of you answer, whatever.